Gilligan's Island and the Beverly Hillbillies on the same day. Is this a great country or what?
Tis the season of launching new TV shows.
Yeah, and tis the season to talk to our good friend Michael Jankins, talking about bankruptcy and different things you can do. But before we start getting into our discussion, of course, Jackie, you realize we were over at the Light the Night event over at Principal Park, and getting ready to dive into the festivities, and I hear somebody yelling my name, and take a look at this. Look who was at Light the Night for leukemia, lymphoma, the man with the lantern. You had a cool lantern, too. Those were pretty neat.
Thank you.
It was a great event, and you and your wife both support the event, so thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you.
That was awesome. So this morning we're going to talk about something involving people that have small businesses.
Yeah, we often talk in our segments about individuals and what they need to bring to their bankruptcy appointment, and a lot of the issues seem to evolve around their issues. Well, I thought today I'd talk about when somebody who is operating a small business kind of starts to struggle and what they should bring to their first appointment when they see me for a consultation.
Okay, let's define that, because Jackie and I were talking prior to us turning the cameras on here. Explain what a small business is in your mind.
Well, at least from my perspective, a small business is going to be a sole proprietorship, which just means you work on your own. You haven't really set up formally any type of business entity, which is just fine. You're not required to. And you could be a plumber, you could be a carpenter, many different things that a person just gets hired on to do on their own. You find the projects and you get paid as an independent contractor. Some people choose to set up some type of a business entity. They're doing the business essentially the same type of way, except now they've registered a name and more of a formal structure of the business with the Secretary of State. So that could be like an LLC, which many people hear of, or an limited liability company, or an S corporation, which is, again, it's very similar to an LLC, and some very big companies can set these up, but many small businesses do, where it'd be a 1 or 2 person operation, and they operate the same. There's just more bookkeeping and paperwork formalities that one has to follow versus just doing it under your own name. But any of these things, I consider them to be small businesses. They can be little storefronts. They can be family businesses where they've rented a space in either a mall or somewhere on the street in a building. And so these are, kind of what I deem small businesses. They're not going to be bringing in millions and millions of dollars in revenue each year, but some of them may bring in up to $1 million of revenue. Unfortunately, there's a lot of expenses, and often when they're seeing me, this $1 million of revenue could be offset by $1.5 million of expense.
Right.
Hence, they're sort of drowning.
Well, we always want to encourage entrepreneurship, but sometimes, like you said, things just don't always work out right, and they might need to come visit you.
It can be real tricky being profitable. Businesses open and close every day in this town. You can see all kinds of restaurants opening up, and a few years later, those restaurants aren't open any longer. And there's other businesses that are just very competitive. And the same in the trade industries and the construction industries. There's a lot of people out there fighting for the jobs, and there's only so many people that are going to get hired to do them, and it's competitive bidding, and so some contractors are out there bidding just to get the work, and it may not be profitable. They just want the work, and hopefully then they get more work, but it doesn't always work out that way, and so then they might be seeing me if they haven't bid profitably very often.
So we've learned a lot about what we need to bring as individuals. What are some specific things that small businesses would have to bring if they're coming to do a consultation with you?
Well, most importantly is probably the list of all the obligations that they've incurred, the names of the companies and the balances. So that's like the most important thing, just so we can see what they're facing and looking at. And often in a self-employed situation, we see many people owing taxes, either because they filed the returns and just didn't have enough money to pay at the end of the year, or didn't plan, or they just haven't, or they haven't even bothered filing their taxes, and we see people with a lot of employment taxes that they haven't taken care of.
Now, you want them to bring the whole return in to you, or?
Well, the returns we're pretty much interested in would be the full personal tax return, and if they're a sole proprietor, that's going to show their Schedule C, so that's going to show all the revenue that the business took in, as well as all the expenses that they've listed. If they have an LLC or an S corporation, then we want to see that corporation or LLC return, which is ordinarily a separate return, and then the profit or the loss is reported from that return onto the personal return. And if they're seeing me, it's usually a loss that they've been reporting on the personal return.
All right.
And so those are important, because when we, at least the initial review of the tax return, if they filed them on and kept up to date, is going to give an indication of what the trend of the business has been. Is their income, when they're seeing me, way down from the previous year? Is it about the same? Is it worse? So it's going to really kind of immediately tune me into what we need to be exploring with the business as far as what direction their business is going. There'll be expenses and deductions that we can look at, see what the business is spending, and it gives us a good idea then too, is this business been operating at a profitable level? Now, just because the tax return shows a certain number, it doesn't always mean it's a correct reflection of how that business is doing, because the tax code allows not only people but businesses to take certain write-offs that aren't necessarily something you write a check for every month, and it's still being something that's deducted off of their income, and it reduces what they've got to pay in tax, either personally or the business.
We have an example of what that might be?
On a tax return, an example would be often on installment loans that the business might be paying for equipment and other things. It's going to usually reflect what interest has been paid as a deduction on the taxes. But when you're looking at the actual checkbook every month, you know, they may be paying out a $2,000 payment every month, either for leasing some kind of equipment or buying it. Well, the interest deduction of that $2,000 might be $500 or $700. Well, they're still paying $2,000 out of their bank account every month that isn't there.
Right.
So that won't be necessarily a true reflection of the picture.
Do you try to pinpoint the problem as such as something like that, with learning about profits and losses? Do you try and figure out what the problem is, or you're just like, let me just...
No, I do ask, because we want to sometimes find out, is it worth our clients staying in business?
True.
Is it something you can save?
Right. I mean, sometimes at the end of the discussion, I suggest to my client, unless they've got some commitments or reasons not to, that they might want to just turn out the lights that weekend and not open them up again, because the cost of the utilities, they're losing money. They're not making any money each month, and so every day they stay open is just losing money, and there's no point to it. But there's some situations where they can restructure their business. Sometimes somebody didn't get paid on a really big job because another company may have folded and gone bankrupt, and they ended up catching the fallout. And a small business that doesn't get paid on a $50,000 job can really be hurting.
Huge. Yeah.
Can really be hurting. So we examine that and find out, you know, can they be profitable? Sometimes there's certain trends that are going on. They could have had competition open up a block down the road that's been killing their business, and they have to decide, is this just a short-term situation? Is it going to settle back, and are they going to be able to pick up business again? Or is it a situation where Casey's opened up across the street from a mom and pop convenience store, and which means it's usually going to be the death of them because they can't compete with Casey's. And so that's a tough
so you just
deal.
need to have your ducks in a row, so to speak. And if you want to come in for a consultation, those are free, correct?
Free consultations, whether you're a business or an individual, there's no time limit on it. So you can call us for that at 255-1855. You can find us on the internet at www.iowa-bankruptcylaw.com.
There you go. Wonderful. All right, good advice. Again, so if you do have a small business and you find yourself in that situation, this would be the guy you want to talk to. Maybe
Thank you very much.
Get things reorganized. Thank you so much. We will be right back. It is 10 minutes before 9 o'clock. You are watching CW Iowa Live in West Des Moines.